you had brought up that states like Florida and Texas did not gain seats. When they did gain seats, my state gained a congressional seat. I think these facts are really important as people are asserting that there's some sort of grand conspiracy here with the Census Bureau. The other thing I want to do is thank you for coming to Central Florida. You met with my staff and community leaders in Orlando, and really appreciate you doing that. My Republican colleagues have called this hearing out of concern about errors resulting in some overcounting in the 2020 census. However, Florida had one of the most harmful undercounts in the country when we talk about black and brown folks specifically. Director Santos, Florida had a roughly 3.5% undercount. Can you put that into terms of how many households were impacted?
One more time?
We had a 3.5% undercount. Can you put that in terms of how many households were undercounted?
I actually can't without some mechanical help. Sorry.
There is something that was going on in 2020 that might have made the counting uniquely challenging. What was that?
There were actually some, I believe, natural disasters.
Yes, natural disasters, and there was another big thing going on. A
The
global pandemic.
Yeah.
COVID-19. I know, I want to forget about it. COVID-19 was going on. But not just that, but Florida, and in part because of the climate crisis, has had increasing extreme weather events across the entire state, hurricanes included. So we have hurricanes, wildfires, a public health crisis, and political interference in what was going on as well. And by political interference, I'm talking about situations where special interest groups are pressuring officials to change questions on the census or end outreach prematurely. For black and brown communities being underrepresented in the census, especially in Florida, it's nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. In fact, the House version of the budget for the census blocks the Census Bureau from reaching out to anyone more than twice, which is funny because some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who would agree with blocking you all from reaching out to people more than twice, I bet some of their constituents would like that limit when they're campaigning as well. Director Santos, if black and brown communities are regularly undercounted, this means that resources are directed away from these communities. We know this worsens the problems of affordable housing, transportation. What other problems does an expander create?
What other problems?
Yeah.
Does what?
Undercounting of
undercounting. Yes. Not only are there impacts with regard to federal funds allocations, but we don't get as accurate a picture of the communities as we should, and that can impact everything from economic development, a manufacturer coming in to see if they have a sufficient labor base. Well, if there's undercounts, there may not be sufficient adults or whatever, to community needs assessments, to infrastructure assessments, whether to put in new roads, new bridges, things of that sort.
Yeah.
So there are an expansive, in business communities also, whether to put in retail shops.
So it really impacts everything.
It impacts all of society.
I think that's right. And this harm, which goes back far longer than a decade, is being made worse, especially in my state, by our governor, Ron DeSantis, who went out of his way to veto the Republican-made political maps in Florida and demanded that his racist version of the map, which Florida Appeals Court confirmed was racist, be accepted. So I just think it's interesting to me that some of my colleagues want to assert that you're part of some grand conspiracy to undercount Republicans when my Republican-run state of Florida received an extra congressional seat. Why? Because of the fastest-growing demographic in the state of Florida, people of color, then use that opportunity of the new seat to actually gerrymander it and get rid of 2 black access seats in the state of Florida. We've got to do a lot better, especially as it relates to these counting errors. Just really quick with the last bit of my time. As I see it, the 2030 census needs to have contingency plans for major disasters, political interference, and reaching undercounted communities. Can you talk a little bit about efforts you've been making to focus on those things, especially natural disasters?
Yeah, certainly we do. We are absolutely leveraging as many of our administrative records from different data sources to help out clarify and improve the counts, not only in disaster zones, but in other areas. And so we're doing that type of work. We're also in our upcoming 2026 test we will be visiting areas that were subject to some severe natural disaster areas like parts of North Carolina.
Thank you so much. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Grofman from Wisconsin.
Yeah, first of all, we're going to give you a quick quiz because I used to collect stamps as a child. I know here we have, what is this person's